The translucid lady that looked exactly like me, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Wolf Onet. The experience I am sharing today happened to me when I was 8 or 9 years old. I'll be 31 by the end of the month. I remember this experience primarily because I wasn't the only one to have seen this apparition, and because of what happened in my life a couple of weeks later. I was living in British Columbia at the time, and with a couple of friends, we went to a barbecue that was hosted in a very old house. In fact, I don't remember well, but I think it was a mansion. The day was going great. We were having a look around the house, inventing ghost stories about the place. Then we were called to get our lunch outside, where the barbecue was. We went outside, of course, and waited in line a couple of minutes before actually getting our plates. While the cook was giving me my plate, I saw a translucid woman with waist-long brown hair and a blue or white dress. In fact, the details I really remember are her face, which was mine basically. She looked exactly like me, with the same hair color, length, only I always tied mine in a ponytail at that time. An odd detail about her was that she wasn't walking on the ground. No, she was floating a couple of inches above the ground. She went from the house and disappeared in the shed that was in a corner of the backyard where the barbecue was. Just after she disappeared, it started to rain. No, it wasn't just rain. It was pouring rain. We rushed inside, and when I sat down with my friends to eat, one of them asked me if I had seen that. I asked, "Seen what?" Then she answered, "The woman who passed in the yard. She looked just like you." No need to say, we all freaked out. The fact it started to rain when she disappeared takes its importance if you consider this fact. My parents divorced shortly afterwards. I was told she was some kind of sign to warn me that something was going to happen. I can't explain the things that used to happen around my strange friend. Posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Sandra, Virginia. Lately I've been thinking a lot about a friend from high school and the unusual things that seemed to only happen when she was around. We were weird kids by conventional standards. We liked metal, bought a lot of drugstore black hair dye, and played around with occulty stuff for fun. But we were fundamentally good kids who did well in school, didn't drink or experiment with drugs, and mostly stayed out of trouble, except for the time the cops ran us out of a cemetery while we were working on a project for photography class. But suffice it to say, I was not, and am not, a complete skeptic. That's why I'm posting here, because I'm not sure if the paranormal aspect of what happened was born from my admittedly influenced teenage imagination, and I'm looking for objective input. The odd happenings started a few months after my friend and I started hanging out regularly. We would sleep over at her house or my house on Friday nights, sometimes with other girls, sometimes just the two of us. We were at her house playing with makeup in the downstairs bathroom. She lived in a big house off a gravel road in the woods with no close neighbors. All of a sudden my friend said, "Did you hear something?" Or something like that. And then the bathroom sink turned on. Just like that, as if someone had turned the knob on full blast. We stared at it stupidly for a few seconds, and then it turned off just as abruptly. I can't remember if I even saw the knob turn. Then there was a loud tap on the bathroom window, almost like someone threw a rock at it. This all happened in the span of maybe 15 seconds. We freaked, ran out of there, and used the guest powder room down the hall, with no windows, for the rest of the night. Another time we were at my house in my room. This little china teacup on a saucer on my desk started vibrating, kind of rattling around. My first thought was that it was a tremor. We lived in a slightly seismically active area, but that cup was the only thing in the room that was rattling. Again, we just stared at it, and then it stopped. My desk was sturdy and on a carpeted floor, and my parents' house is, or was then, newish, brick, and not near train tracks or a busy highway. Other things happened around her. We saw her ex in the grocery store once, and the 2-liter bottle of soda he was holding jumped out of his hands and exploded everywhere when it hit the floor. I told myself he just dropped it. Once I was home alone and the phone rang. This was in the long ago time before everyone had cell phones. The caller ID said it was my friend, but when I answered it, there was only very loud static. I hung up and called her back, and she said she was sleeping and hadn't called me. I dismissed it as a technical glitch. I got used to ignoring things that creeped me out. Then, out of nowhere, she cut ties with me and, I later discovered, all of our mutual friends. I still have no idea why. I've experienced a few things I can't explain since then, but for the most part, the odd happenings stopped. Years later, my mom forwarded me a letter my old friend had mailed. It was unsettling. She wrote about sleepwalking and a big white dog that ran around in her house at night. I didn't write her back, and I wish I had. In retrospect, I think she might have been asking for my help. A little while ago, my mom told me my friend's mother died of cancer. Now I'm thinking about reaching out to offer my condolences, and I'm remembering all these weird things that happened. Has anyone else experienced or heard about anything like this? Was it all just mundane junk that I thought was paranormal because I wanted it to be? I honestly have no idea. Apologies for this novel I've written, and I applaud your dedication if you actually read all of this. Ghostly Little Girl, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by IV Corrupt VI. First time poster here. I've been a long-time lurker and decided to make an account so I could share a few stories. This story happened the weekend of St. Patrick's Day this year, so here's a little background before we get into the story itself. This all takes place at my girlfriend's house, which is your typical suburban home. Her parents were gone on a skiing trip and told us we could use the house to host a little St. Patty's party for our friends as long as we cleaned up after ourselves afterwards. Being the college kids we are, we get pretty excited about having these types of gatherings at home because our town doesn't have much to offer. The day was Friday, and it was the day before St. Patty's Day. My girlfriend and I were out buying everything and anything that was green for the party we were having the next day. After we got back to her house, our friend Will asked if it was okay for him to head over and help prepare for the party. Obviously, we didn't mind, because we needed all the help we could get. After we finished the preparations, all of us decided to relax a little and see what was on TV. It just so happens that the TV had turned on to the Travel Channel, which was having a marathon of one of their reality paranormal shows they air. After watching an episode or two, my girlfriend decided to explain to Will that she thinks that her house is haunted, and went on to describe some of the events that have happened. Footsteps, doors opening, closing, noises, etc. At this point, Will and I were pointing out possible reasons of what could have actually happened for each of her stories. Anyway, later in the night, Will left, and we went upstairs to go to sleep. I found myself being woken up in the middle of the night by the sounds of footsteps out in the hallway, but I just figured it was my girlfriend's dog. My girlfriend was sound asleep beside me, that likes to roam around the house at night, so I tried to go back to sleep. I woke up again about a half hour later to hear the same footsteps in the hallway, but this time they sounded like they were headed toward the room where my girlfriend and I were sleeping. Again, I figured it was just the dog, but then I heard the dog's collar move as she shifted positions down near the foot of our bed. My heart started racing at this point because my mind automatically shifted to thinking there was an intruder in the house. I started to make my way out of the bed and to the door to investigate things as the footsteps were getting closer and closer to my girlfriend's room. As soon as I got out of bed, though, the footsteps sounded like they quickly escalated, as if someone started sprinting down the hallway and then stopped. I looked back at my girlfriend to see if the noise from what sounded like a stampede had woken her up, but she was still sound asleep in the bed. I looked back at the open doorframe to notice the silhouette of what appeared to be a small child wearing a white dress with curly blondish hair. I closed my eyes for a good 5 seconds, opened them back up, and the silhouette was gone. I thought to myself that my brain was playing tricks on me and went back to sleep. When both of us were awake the next day, my girlfriend jokingly asked if I had seen any ghosts last night. For whatever reason, I didn't tell her about the previous night, and after I had said nothing happened, she began to tell me more about what her and her family have experienced. She said that 8 years ago, when they first moved in, she was taking pictures of the house with a Kodak disposable camera. Apparently, when she had the pictures developed, she noticed something odd about the picture she took of her room. On the picture, she said, there was a face of a girl with blonde curly hair in the entrance to her room. Sadly, she said she didn't know where the picture was, and I still think she was messing around with me. I just don't know how she could, since I hadn't told her about what I had seen that night. Creepy, right? Let me know what you guys think, and maybe I'll share some more stories. Strange happenings in an assisted living home on third shift, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Boopy's Revenge. Sorry for updating in the middle of the week instead of right after my time alone during the weekend. We've been super busy at the home because we're finally getting the rest of our residents moved in. Anyways, on to what happened. Friday night was a pretty typical night. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Same thing with Saturday. I didn't notice anything unusual or have any unusual experiences. Sunday night was slightly different. When I went in, the staff working second shift informed me of some odd occurrences. They claimed that the same door that had opened on its own during third shift opened while they were there. We promptly did some experimenting with the door, but nothing was weird about it. When the door latches, it's very secure, and as I said before, the doors are pretty heavy, so they take some decent force to swing open. Nothing happened to me during the night that could constitute as paranormal. Tuesday night, however, was a slightly different story. The guy training me on night shift said he's been doing some research on the property and presented me with his evidence. He looked into the city's past and discovered that the area the home is built on used to be farmland that was eventually developed into a suburban area. The original farmhouse stayed on the property after other houses were built around it. He found out that the man who lived in the house committed suicide. At first, I was skeptical of all of it, but when we were outside in front of the house taking a smoke break, the guy who lives across the street, who was also smoking, came over with his dog and talked with us. We asked him questions about the history of the neighborhood, and he confirmed that the previous house owners did actually commit suicide on the property. The eerie part is that they found him hanging in his bedroom, which just so happened to sit around the same area as the door that leads to the parking lot. A very strange coincidence indeed. Also of note, on Tuesday night, we did hear the banging again. It happened twice in the night. Once around 1:30 a.m., and then again around 3 a.m. We assumed it was one of the residents being restless, but every time we went to check on them, they were all fast asleep. I'll be working third shift the rest of this week and next week. After that, I'm back to first. I'll share anything of interest that happens.